Howdy, howdy. Welcome back to the Back of the End Zone podcast. I'm Josh Ryzik here with Bryant Kleski, and this is episode 24 of our podcast. It's crazy to me that we've even gotten this far already, that we haven't ripped each other's heads off by this point. And I mean,
came close.
Dude,
no, I'm joking.
Yeah, no, real dang close. No, but like, it's been such a blast just doing this podcast together, just breaking down college football, NFL.
And you know what's better than 24? Next week, 25.
Yeah, heck yeah, SpongeBob, baby. But, I mean, and this week's episode, too, like, there was some big stuff that happened last week in college football. Unfortunately for Bryant, he's been hearing a little bit too much about it.
Texas might be back, man.
Yeah, Texas might be back. And we'll get into that with Texas at Bama. Another school, too, that might be back, that gets overhyped every year. I'm not going to say their name now, but they're in the top 25 now. And Bryant's already given it away. But for those listening on Spotify, you don't know yet. But I mean, some crazy stuff happened in college football this week. Couple big upsets. Colorado still hung on. And then some crazy NFL stuff between Aaron Rodgers in his first game.
The Jets can't catch a break, dude.
Yeah, seriously. But, I mean, we're going to dive right into it in this episode and just get rolling with a bunch of the craziness and the chaos that's gone on.
A lot to get into this week, man.
A lot to get into, but we're going to get into it right away. So, welcome. We're going right into segment one.
All right, before we get into segment one and the podcast is sponsored by Now Fitness. Now Fitness is a gym and fitness center based in Grove Hill, Alabama. They do personal training, group sessions with CrossFit and other workouts, and they help local athletes train and get in their best shape. Call 251-269-3065 for more. Go get in shape, man. No, I'm joking. I'm not going to tell you what to do.
Hey, I've been getting in shape. I need to go to Now Fitness though, and just
I need to go to a gym.
Hey, get that grind in for sure. But I mean, like we said in the opening, this week seriously was a crazy week for all of college football.
Yes.
Obviously, between Texas and Bama, it was going to be a crazy week. It was bound to be a bad day for either one of those fan bases. Two really known blue bloods in all of college football. And obviously, we know the outcome. We know what happened. But
in the end, it came down to quarterback play. Quinn Ewers played a much cleaner game, better game than Jalen Milroe. Jalen Milroe made two very big mistakes, interceptions where he was staring receivers down the entire way, didn't see the safety or the corner cracking down, and Quinn Ewers made more plays than Jalen Milroe. And what Texas did is they took advantage of Alabama not being able to do much offensively in the first half. Alabama's offense didn't really come alive until the second half, and that's what really got out. That's what it caught up to Alabama. It caught up to Jalen Milroe. It caught up to the defense of Alabama. They got tired at the end. They started giving up the bigger plays. The 39-yard touchdown to A.D. Mitchell in the fourth quarter. It was just a lot of factors that went in. But Quinn Ewers, I couldn't have been more impressed with his performance. I mean, you heard it all last year when after he came back after getting hurt. He struggled throwing the deep ball, and you heard it against Rice. He wasn't able to throw the deep ball. People were, including myself, was questioning his ability to throw it deep, and he showed off his arm. He showed off his talent. He showed off what he could do. He also made some plays with his legs and those weapons, man. I mean,
but with Xavier Worthy and A.D. Mitchell,
and then Jatavian Sanders. Yeah. I mean,
there's not much you can do about it. And at the end of the day, Alabama played a hell of a football game up until that fourth quarter. And that fourth quarter is when Texas really pulled away, and they were like, this is our game. And then again, too, Jalen Milroe had two crucial interceptions. Had those interceptions not happened, completely different game. And, I mean, not just blaming it on the turnovers, but Jalen Milroe's accuracy still is not there, and I think you already know that. And you're going to see growth and improvement. And I think that's the nice part, though, too, is that this was a Week 2 game, and there's still 10 other games ahead of this where Bama can bounce back and play well enough to still make their way into the playoff and maybe see Texas again in the national championship or opening round.
I know I just said the biggest difference was quarterback play, but I'm going to change that. The biggest difference, and I said this last week, was the trenches. Texas O-line did a hell of a job keeping Bama's pressure at bay. They allowed no sacks, as to where Bama's offensive line really struggled. I think Bama's at the biggest, like, pound for pound, has the biggest offensive line. I think they averaged like 360 or something, 355, 360. They were too big to really move and give Jalen Milroe a chance in the pocket. Almost every chance he got, he was scrambling. They gave up. Alabama's offensive line gave up 5 sacks to Texas. I mean, Anthony Hill, a freshman, one of the top linebackers in last year's recruiting class, came up with 2 of them. He had a very impressive game. That Texas defense, I mean, I think they're back, man. They are elite everywhere on the field, and that's a credit to Sark and his being able to recruit the way he can. It seems like he's starting to finally put it together. What worries me for Texas going forward is how they handle a big win like this, because you've seen it to where Texas, like, teams that you think are back on the rise, after such a long time of being down, like Texas, when Texas beat Georgia in the Sugar Bowl a few years back. So you had Sam Ehlinger say Texas or Longhorn Nation and we're back, but then they they have a terrible season the next.
Yeah, and that tends to happen too. A lot of these, and I wouldn't even say it's the teams. More than likely, usually it's the fans.
Yeah.
That just set their expectations way too high, and you get way too excited. But I mean, it's bound to happen either way. Because say for teams that have been out of it for so long, once you finally get back in, like Texas now, in the top 4. They're in the top 4, and it's like you're at a point where, as a Texas fan, like, you do really feel like Texas is back, and I mean, they are at this point. Like, they really have proven it.
Yeah, it's just how they handle that going forward. How do they handle such a big and emotional win, not only for Sark and the program, but for these players as well who lost to Alabama last year? They were finally able to go into Bryant-Denny and beat Alabama, which is not an easy thing to do by no stretch.
Yeah, there's in the past 12 years, there's not many quarterbacks that have beaten Alabama at home between now Quinn Ewers, Joe Burrow.
The last 2 have been Ohio State transfers.
I know. Have been Ohio State transfers. But hey, then Cardell Jones still won in the Sugar Bowl in 2014. So,
but that wasn't
in Tuscaloosa. Yeah.
But what it takes to beat Alabama, and you've seen it every time they get beat, a quarterback challenging them down the field, and Quinn Ewers did that. I was impressed with his performance. Now, on the Alabama side, everything that Alabama wants to accomplish is still there. This was an early loss in the season. Now, being at home, it kind of hurts them. But it was a 10-point loss, close game for most of the game. Texas just pulled away. But everything that they want to accomplish is still obtainable. If they want to go win the SEC, they can do that, because this was not a conference game. If they want to make the college football playoff, they have to run the table. But they can win. But if they win the SEC, they will definitely be in. If they want to win a national title, they can still do that. You need better quarterback play. And the offensive line and defensive line has got to get better. I thought the secondary played really well until the fourth quarter. It comes to the trenches, man. And Alabama is really weak at both the D-line and offensive line, which is something that's very rare to say about Alabama.
Yeah, I mean, and it was just, I would say it was a shocker, because we expected either team could have easily came out on top with this win. And, it just so happened to be Texas played better football on Saturday, and they came out on top. Obviously, Quinn Ewers is really happy about that. But I think Texas is bound to have not that Alabama's not going to have a great year, but I think Texas is going to have one of their best years in many, many years.
But if they play the way they did against Bama, they could easily go undefeated and win the whole thing.
Yeah, seriously. And and we weren't saying this 2 weeks ago.
No.
So that's the thing. That's the crazy thing with college football
we all knew Texas has talent because they're able to recruit so well, because it's Texas. The brand speaks for itself. But they were finally. You didn't know if they were going to be able to put it all together, and they finally did. So that's all I had to say on this. Texas was just a better team on Saturday night, and we'll see what happens with both these teams going down the road.
Yeah, and another team that I really want to go into, like Bryant was saying, Texas is back. I don't want to necessarily say that this team is back. I think their fans are saying this right now, and I think a lot of other people are hinting at the fact that this team could be back, but it's the University of Miami Hurricanes. Miami went in Saturday playing number 23 Texas A&M. It was at Miami, but I mean, we, in our guest pick'em segment last week, we both thought that Connor Wegman and the Aggies were going to have a game and that they were really going to hush this Miami hype because every single year around this time, Miami tends to sneak their way into the back of the top 25.
Yeah.
It happens every single year. And then usually they end up getting hushed back and just shoved out of the top 25 and like stereotypical like Miami play. But Mario Cristobal really is building something here at Miami. And I don't want to say that they're back, but they are getting there, man. Tyler Van Dyke was throwing lights out, threw for 374 yards and 5 touchdowns on Saturday.
Yeah.
Their receiver, Jacoby George, wasn't even their leading yardage receiver, but he received 3 of those 5 touchdowns for 94 yards. And it's like the real thing that it came down to is Connor Wegman threw 2 picks that were crucial, and that's kind of what gave Miami the game. Said those picks did not happen. Yeah. Maybe Texas A&M would have been a little bit closer or came out on top of that game, but this is really huge for Miami going forward. I mean, obviously, big win over a ranked team, and now they're ranked number 22 in the nation.
Yeah.
And they're going in this year playing like Bethune-Cookman, and then they have a couple I'd say easy games until they play at North Carolina.
Yeah.
Then they host Clemson at home, but this Miami team really could have a shot at playing Florida State potentially in the ACC championship, and they play Florida State in one of their last games.
This was a big momentum game for either of these teams. You know, both of these teams very much underachieved last year. Now A&M underachieved more because, Cristobal was in his first year at Miami, so there wasn't really much. We didn't really know what to expect with Miami last year, but they still underachieved in terms of the what Miami hopes to do year in and year out is compete for a championship. But A&M, both of these teams, this is a momentum game for both these teams. Miami just scored more, man. Texas and Connor Wayman threw 2 interceptions, which was a difference in the game. I thought going into this game that Texas A&M was going to have too much talent. Evan Stewart, you see on the stat sheet, 11 receptions for 142 yards. I mean, the dude's elite. You think with the talent that A&M has, they'd be able to win this game. But Miami just proved that they wanted it more, and Miami got the dub at the end of the day.
Yeah, between James Williams and Jaden Davis, 2 on their defense, wrecking havoc for Connor Wegman and the rest of the Texas A&M offense. But we talked about this before the episode started, actually. Through week 2, the SEC now has 6 non-con losses in the first 2 weeks, and 4 of those 6 losses come to the ACC. So, the ACC right now, and 2 of the more notable games were Florida State taking down LSU, then maybe Miami taking down A&M. But, this is huge for the ACC. Clemson is having a really bad year on the downfall. I don't see them coming anywhere near the top of the ACC picture anymore. But now, looking at the top of the ACC, you got Miami, North Carolina, and Florida State that are all going to be competing for it. And I think at the very beginning of the year, I only saw Clemson and Florida State competing for that ACC title. And I think Florida State's still going to come out on top. But now you got North Carolina and Miami with a lot of energy heading into week 3 before you get into all those big conference games.
I think, and the NIL transfer portal has just really spread out the wealth, spread out the amount of talent. It's not just the SEC guys, SEC teams getting all this talent. You see it where more an SEC team is not just going to be able to go into Florida unless they are Florida and pull out a top recruit. You still have to compete. Now you have to compete with Florida State, Florida, Miami, UCF. It's really spread out parity and spread out talent, and I still don't think the SEC is people are saying the SEC is getting weaker and all. I don't think that's the case. I just think
there's just more competition.
There's
Everyone
more
else
competition.
is able to get those recruits now with NIL, and you're seeing it everywhere though too. All these different schools that never used to get 5 stars or just top recruits in general are getting
for real,
top recruits now.
Like Auburn, for example. I'm using Auburn as an example because they don't rarely get 5 stars. Their last 5-star recruit was in 2019. Well, in this cycle, they already have 2. That's just what Hugh Freeze has been able to do there. But I'll get off Auburn. But I was just using them as an example. But it's really spread out the talent to other places. But like I said, Miami's now got huge momentum. And it's the same thing with Texas. How do they handle this going forward? How do they handle this success? They got Bethune-Cookman this Saturday. They ought to beat them pretty well. But then you start getting into conference play. How do they handle that success later on? How do they handle winning that big game? So
yeah, I mean, and going into some of these other games too. Before we go into our Week 3 kind of preview, there were some really odd games this week. Not necessarily odd, but I mean games as in where teams that are ranked higher, as in 2 Pac-12 teams, Utah and Oregon. Utah was at Baylor and Oregon was at Texas Tech. Texas Tech and Baylor held their own for majority of those games. Both of those teams, like Texas Tech dominated Oregon up until the fourth quarter. And the same thing happened with Baylor. Like Utah didn't score a touchdown until the fourth quarter. And that's when they scored their 2 touchdowns. Utah obviously scored with, I think, like 26 seconds to go. I don't know if you watched the end of that game. But then Baylor had a miraculous drive down the field and had like a 30-yard pass.
Almost took it to overtime.
Yeah, almost took it to overtime. And I mean, you could say that there was PI there by Utah in that pass in the end zone at the very end of the game, final with like 1 second left. I think there was a little bit of PI, but at the same time, like these teams, Baylor was competing with freaking Utah. I mean, then again, Utah doesn't have Cameron Rising. And then you look at Oregon, though, too. Oregon came off a couple huge wins. Then they go and play at Texas Tech, who was 0-1. Now they're 0-2. But Oregon barely runs away with that game due to a pick six with, 40 seconds left?
Yeah.
And I mean, like, it's just wild to see. Like, I mean, Bo Nix had a game, too. Bo Nix is obviously, like, still trying to make his name for Heisman, passed for 359 yards and 2 touchdowns. Then Tyler Show, Texas Tech's quarterback, threw for 3 touchdowns and almost 300 yards, but also had 3 picks.
Yeah, those were some good games. And then, App State gave North Carolina a run for their money. Tennessee struggled early against Austin Peay. Clemson struggled early against Charleston Southern. I don't even remember who they played.
Yeah, Charleston Southern State or something like that.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah,
there were some odd games, but it's a new week. Teams are looking to get better. So we're going to kind of get into some NFL talk, man. The New York Jets, man, they can't catch a break.
Yeah, seriously. You have Aaron Rodgers come out on September 11th. Has that very
he comes out with the flag, a very epic
emotional,
entrance.
Exciting, just run out for his opening moments as a
new era for Jets fans. They were exciting, and for the players as well. You got to feel for the players, especially the young guys who are getting like Garrett Wilson, who was getting ready to play with Aaron Rodgers as his quarterback, and then 75 seconds later, their first drive, he goes down with a torn Achilles. You could obviously
tell he was hurt. Yeah,
you could see the injury. I mean, we're not going to put it on here. It is. I mean, it is. You could tell right away something was wrong. But as for what the Jets should do forward, they still won that game.
Yeah.
Josh Allen completed more passes to the Jets players than Aaron Rodgers has. So he threw 3 picks. I don't know what's going on with Josh Allen. It just looks like to me like he's trying to play hero ball too much. He's trying to go the deep ball too much.
Yeah, I mean, he really – and this happened with a couple of different teams. There's a lot of, veteran all-star – extremely great quarterbacks in the NFL that just did not play well. And, I mean, that could be week 1 jitters. I think that is what it is. But, Joe Burrow as well didn't play well at all week 1. And, I mean, you expect to see a lot more out of those guys, and it's just interesting. But going back to the Jets real quick, and this isn't really about Aaron Rodgers. It kind of is, but – I don't know if you saw, there was a bar in Green Bay, Wisconsin, that for this Monday night game, Bills at Jets did a thing where they said if the Jets lost, they would pay for everybody's bar tab because of the fact that Aaron Rodgers left. And so literally all these people are running up the bar tab, spending hundreds of dollars on drinks, hoping that the Jets would lose. And they all thought they would because Aaron Rodgers went down. They're going crazy, getting even more rowdy, running up their tabs. And then obviously, the Jets won, and all those guys were pissed.
Like I said, I hate it for Aaron Rodgers, man. I hate it for the players, especially Jets fans. But and I don't know if they're probably not going to do this. I mean, probably no interest from the man himself. But why not give Tom Brady a call? Why not say, hey, we have about 20 to 25 million on the table. We sign you to a 1-year deal. We have the defense, obviously, to win a Super Bowl. We have some weapons on the outside. The offensive line's a little bit shaky, but we can work on that. Why not see what you can give us for one season? And I honestly would make that call. Now, whether or not Tom Brady, there's the same level of interest from Tom Brady, who knows? I mean, he was just being celebrated by the Patriots this past weekend, so probably wouldn't be a good look.
Yeah,
But why not take that chance? Why not take a swing? Now, if he says no, he says no. I mean, there's nothing you can do about that. But that's a hell of a lot better than some of your other options like Carson Wentz,
or Cam Newton,
yeah. Matt Ryan, all these other washed-up quarterbacks. Like why not see what he had to offer? Now they could go trade for a backup like Gardner Minshew. I've heard his name thrown out. Jacoby Brissett. I've heard Trey Lance. He just got traded to the Cowboys. Well, why not see what you got?
You never know, and just make the quarterback situation a little even. Because Zach Wilson, as of right now, thinks
might as well trade for Justin Fields because
keep that zone.
Because the Bears might move on from him after this season.
No, the Bears are not. It was week one jitter. But I mean, yeah, it'll be interesting to see what the Jets bring.
Trade for Russell Wilson.
It'll be interesting to see what they do to bring into that quarterback room to give Zach Wilson even more competition now, because Zach Wilson's probably so happy he got that spot. Even now, after the fact, like Garrett Wilson the other day, was in a post-game interview, and he was like talking about how sad he was when he went into the locker room at halftime, and like Aaron Rodgers was like, "I'm sorry, kid."
Yeah,
and they like both said, "I love you," whatever, and like Garrett Wilson looked distraught, man. And I was like, you feel for the guy because like he's such a generational talent, and like you don't want Zach Wilson throwing him the ball, and that's just how it happens to be. But I mean, the Jets taking on they're at the Cowboys this upcoming week. So and the Cowboys just had that crazy defensive performance this past week.
That's not been a great weekend for New York in general for both New York teams.
Yeah,
I know. I lost a fantasy game because of how good the Cowboys defense was. If any of y'all play fantasy football, you know how the points work. A defense does not put up that much points.
Yeah, 35 points.
They put up 35 points. I was up by 30 points in this game. Literally had it wrapped up, and I was like, it's like a 99% chance of 90-something% chance of winning. And then 5 minutes into this game against the Cowboys and Giants, I'm losing because they return a kick six. They get a pick six as well. It's just pandemonium. It's ridiculous.
For me,
the Cowboys.
For me, the thing that sucked about with one of my fantasy leagues, not the league that we're in together, but a different league with a bunch of kids from Illinois. The guy that I was playing just so happened to have the Cowboys defense and Tyreek Hill, who together combined for like 80 points on fantasy.
I had Tyreek Hill,
and I was so pissed off about that because I was like, look, before the Dolphins game, I'm like, I got this in the bag. I'm winning this game. And then both of those guys, you can't do anything about it. It sucks, but there's there's literally nothing you can do. But yeah, I think that's gonna wrap up segment one with our little preview our post-game recap for week one of the NFL and week two of college football. But now let's dive right into segment two. All right, you ready?
Oh, yeah.
All right, before we dive straight into segment two, we would like to thank one of our sponsors, 251 Pool Works, for sponsoring our podcast. 251 Pool Works is family owned and operated, and they offer pool cleaning, maintenance, and repair. They serve the greater Mobile, Baldwin County, and Pensacola areas. And if you are needing any monthly pool cleaning services and or repair, give them a call at 251-978-7736. For the Pool Works. 251 Pool Works does a great job. We say it every week. You know we're exiting the summer era, the summer season. And so just get your pools cleaned, get them winterized, get them prepared for the fall and the winter heading into this. And everyone's saying that Alabama, Mississippi, the whole southeastern area, I've been seeing a ton of stuff saying that this is going to be the worst winter in years for the South. I've been seeing stuff all over social media. Not that that's necessarily true, but they've been saying it's supposed to be really bad. Maybe even some potential snow here. So we'll see what happens.
As hot as it's been here, I doubt that.
Hey,
we'll see.
Hey, reach out to 251 Pool Works. But let's dive right into segment two. A little bit of a preview that we have for week 3 of college football.
Let's just go ahead and call it what it is. The week 3 slate absolutely sucks.
Oh, it's awful. It's god awful. I mean,
you have some teams starting conference play Like you have LSU at Mississippi State, which I think is going to be a really good game. You have Tennessee at Florida, which is a really good game. I think we're going to probably preview. You have South Carolina at Georgia. You got a good non-conference game. You have Minnesota traveling to North Carolina. You got Northwestern at Duke. You got you have some others.
It's a game that we don't talk. We're not going to talk about this game on our Pick'em segment. But Georgia Tech at Ole Miss. That's a game that's like I mean you wouldn't. I think Georgia Tech could pull that off. I'm nothing against Ole Miss at all. But, I mean, it's just one of those games where it's like you really don't know.
Well, now that you mention it, like, I'm not going to say Georgia Tech's going to pull it off.
But Georgia Tech went down to the wire with Louisville. They lost by like 4 or 5, I think, in week 1. Not saying that Louisville's good either, because they're really not. But Georgia Tech could take the Rebels.
This could be a instance where you see, because Ole Miss has Alabama next week, you could the Yellow Jackets of Georgia Tech could
be a little overlooked.
Could catch Ole Miss looking ahead, or catch Ole Miss sleeping. Looking ahead to Bama. Probably a slow start. I mean, I probably still would go Ole Miss to win this game because Georgia Tech has just not been the same in the last decade. But this could be a sneaky good game. But I'm not sure. I mean, with it being in Ole Miss, being in Oxford, I don't know. I mean, I think Jackson Dart's a pretty good quarterback, but like I said, like you said, it probably one that nobody's talking about because Georgia Tech could come in there and catch Ole Miss off guard.
Yeah, I mean, and another team that could catch another really big team off guard. I know you probably already know where I'm going to go with this, but Western Kentucky going to Columbus, Ohio at Ohio State. Obviously, as an Ohio State fan, I don't want to say anything bad about my team, but Western Kentucky is good. They were really good. They were a really good team last year. They have Austin Reed coming back, who's a great quarterback, probably even more of a complete quarterback than Kyle McCord is right now. Kyle McCord's officially Ohio State's starting quarterback. But, I mean, Western Kentucky's going into this game going to give it all that they have, especially with Ohio State looking to play Notre Dame week 4. Like, this is a game where Ohio State didn't meet expectations week 1 and week 2. A lot of people wanted them to obviously put up a lot more points. It may not be easy with the new rules, with the clock going so much faster. But at the same time, like, Western Kentucky is going to go into this game literally, like, ready to punch Ohio State in the mouth. Yeah. And we'll see. I think this is going to be a very high-scoring game. I think Ohio State still comes out on top. But, I mean, don't underestimate Western Kentucky going into Columbus, Ohio either, because –
and also one of the games we're gonna pick is Georgia, South Carolina. So every now and then, South Carolina wins this game. Every now and then, every few years, somehow South Carolina wins this game. The last time South Carolina won this game, it was in Athens, but Georgia, and we'll get more into it in our pick'em section or segment. Georgia has gotten off to slow starts in the last couple weeks against inferior opponents. Spencer Rattler's been playing really well. If Georgia gets off to another slow start, and South Carolina can expose that or take advantage of that, South Carolina has a good shot at winning this game. If they let Georgia come out the gate if Georgia gets off to a slow start and they let Georgia hang around, then it's just probably going to be another Georgia blowout.
Yeah, probably. But, I mean, if you see that connection between Spencer Rattler and Xavier Legette, their number one wide receiver, you could see a very, very good game here in Athens. And, I mean, obviously, I think Georgia will come out on top, but Georgia is known to come out very slow, especially in the first couple of weeks of the college football season. Like last year we saw I think it was Kent State in Athens, and Kent State gave Georgia a run for their money the whole first half.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's bound to happen with any team, especially the first couple of weeks. But I mean, we'll see, because Spencer Rattler is going to go into this game, especially after losing to North Carolina week 1. I think South Carolina's kind of in this wake up mode right now too, where they have to, if they want to even compete, they have to win out. And
then another out of conference or non-conference game that I like is Kansas State at Missouri. Missouri is looking to, kind of get things rolling here. Missouri their first 2 years in the SEC. They made it to the SEC championship game. This is probably their best they've looked since. They have Braden. I think his name is Braden Cook as their quarterback. Brady Cook, and they got Luther Burden, one of the best receivers in college football. He is really special. Kansas State is also really good. I think this could be a really good game in Columbus. I really like this game. So we'll see how this one plays out. Alabama goes to South Florida, which is kind of odd, seeing but you saw it last week with Ole Miss going to Tulane, where Alabama goes to a Group of 5 opponent. Alabama looking to bounce back with a big win against South Florida. There's some questions about will Saban start another quarterback or start a different quarterback?
Especially since it's against South Florida.
Will he play the other quarterbacks a lot more than Milroe? Will he see, because
test the waters
because he admitted in his post-game press conference that he considered pulling Milroe. He considered putting another quarterback in there, but he didn't. So we'll see. These are some good games. I'm excited. I mean, it's football. I mean, the slate's not all that great, but there's always some upsets in there somewhere. Florida State goes to Boston College. Penn State and Illinois play. That's always a tough one for those two teams. Northwestern at Duke. There's some good ones.
There's some all right games, but then taking a look at the NFL slate for this week, there's a decent slate between. I mean, obviously, I think like one of the first games Sunday. Obviously, Vikings Eagles play Thursday night, but Ravens Bengals on Sunday.
Yeah.
That's a big game where the Bengals are coming off a huge loss to Cleveland. Are you expecting Joe Burrow to bounce back?
Definitely. I mean, he's coming off that ankle or whatever calf injury he sustained in the in training camp. I think they'll bounce back. Baltimore looked a little shaky. They're now without J.K. Dobbins.
Yeah, which is huge.
He can't catch a break. I feel bad for him. But Zay Flowers, their rookie receiver, looked pretty good. This will be a battle. I think it's always a battle between these two teams. A game I'm looking at, especially for a team wanting to bounce back, is Kansas City at Jacksonville.
That divisional round rematch from last year.
Yes. Patrick Mahomes, Kadarius Toney, that offense looking to bounce back. I'm sure they'll have Travis Kelce back this weekend. The Jaguars looked really good against the Colts. Calvin Ridley,
great start.
Great first game back from his suspension and his new home in Jacksonville.
I wonder if he had money on his over/under for touchdowns.
maybe not. Green Bay takes on Atlanta, two fairly new quarterbacks, and Jordan Love and Desmond Ridder. After both coming off Week 1 wins, seeing how they respond to that. Seattle at Detroit. Then you got the battle of the rookies between Anthony Richardson and C.J. Stroud, between the Colts and Texans.
And C.J. Stroud, honestly, he looked good Week 1. He looked as good as I think he could have looked.
Yeah.
And I mean, no offense, I love C.J. Stroud as a person and as a football player too. But I mean, I think the Texans are fairly pleased with how he played, and I think for a rookie quarterback, you can't expect much more after how he played Week 1. But
so you're saying the Sunday night game is, I think, is a real treat. New England and Miami. Okay, both New England should have won that game against Philadelphia. Philadelphia let New England hang around. Mac Jones played incredibly well. That pick six by Darius Slay wasn't on him. It was on his receiver for not catching it. Miami, Tua coming off one of his best games, man. I can't be more happy for Tua. I root for all the Bama quarterbacks because I'm a Bama fan. I root for all of them to succeed. And there has not been a quarterback in the league doubted more than Tua since he's been in the league. And, man, with that performance against Justin Herbert and the Chargers, against a fairly good Chargers defense that has Bosa and Khalil Mack, I think Miami can, if Tua stays healthy, they can win it all, man.
Well, when you have Tyreek Hill playing the way that Tyreek Hill is and how fast he is, there's not much else you can do too when Tua's putting the ball on the money too.
Yeah, Tua, except for one interception that was kind of on him, kind of on his receiver. Except for one interception, he played incredibly well. So that game will be a real treat. Alabama quarterback's going at it, Last weekend you saw Mac and Jalen Hurts go at it. Now you got Miami and New England going at it, Tua and Mac. That'll be a real treat. Both of those defenses going up, against those offenses.
Yeah. Miami's running game needs to turn around, though. I think Miami knows that they're in a kind of crisis with their running backs. I mean, Raheem Mostert rushed for 37 yards, and I think they rushed for almost under 50 yards between their whole running back group.
Our teams were looking to bounce back from losses. Denver hosts the Commanders. Chicago travels to Tampa Bay, so those will be some decent games. So there's a lot of football to look forward to, man. And talking about some high school football on Friday night, you got a good game that if any of y'all want to go catch, Spanish Fort at Saraland, two of the top teams around the area, both loaded with talent. So I mean, it's a good weekend for football.
Yeah, it is a good weekend for football. And I mean, I say this every week. You can only just be happy that football is back, and every weekend we have football.
And it's
now.
fixing to go by now that it's back.
Exactly.
It sucks,
but it's awesome that we're just back in that groove. Fall is just around the corner too.
That's right.
But football's here. Football's among us, and got a great weekend of football ahead of us. So. Welcome back, and welcome to the Week 3 Pick'em segment. We're back at the end zone. This week, our special Pick'em guest just so happens to be Alyssa Spertoli, my girlfriend, special education major here at South Alabama. She's not very knowledgeable with college football,
but that's okay.
So, yeah, this will be really interesting to see how this ends up turning out. But so we have our 7 game slate for our Pick'em games this week. It'll be really fun to kind of break that down and see what Alyssa thinks of who she thinks is going to come out on top. And like we always say every week, the person who has the most picks correct out of the Pick'em segment will win a prize at the end of the college football season. Last week, RBT, Samuel Brown, ended up getting 5 out of 7 correct. So 5 is the number to beat, Alyssa. So
him and Cody are tied. So we're gonna have to come up with a tiebreaker too.
Yeah, we will have to come up with a tiebreaker for sure. But starting out this week, first game we have on the board, number 1 Georgia hosts South Carolina at home. And, I mean, this is an interesting game because obviously I think South Carolina had very high expectations going into this year. But I think going into this game in Athens, there's not much to look forward to as a South Carolina fan. Like, you really have to go into this game like it's your Super Bowl against Georgia. And then again, I still don't think South Carolina stands a chance.
You have to really be on your game when you saw it last week when Texas went to Bryant-Denny and beat Alabama. It's hard to go into an atmosphere like that. You have to be really on your game. Spencer Rattler's playing really good, but I just don't think South Carolina as a team can get it done. I got Georgia big. I don't know why we're picking this one, but it is. I got Georgia big, man.
Yeah, I mean, I got Georgia big too. I think, either way, yes, South Carolina competed with UNC a little bit week 1. Last week they played Furman, but I think it's pretty sad that they let Furman put up 21 on them, even though South Carolina won 47-21. But
now Georgia could struggle early in this game because they have gotten off to slow starts in the past 2 weeks. But once they get it rolling, it's
game over. Carson Beck is having a day, and
if South Carolina can find a way to take advantage of that slow start, we'll see. But I still got Georgia big.
Yeah, I got Georgia big too. But I mean, speaking of that, Alyssa, who do you have coming out on top? South Carolina at Georgia.
I'm going to have to say Georgia. Josh and I's high school replicated everything from Georgia Bulldogs, from their mascot, colors, logo, everything. So I'll go with Georgia.
All right. I mean, hey, good analysis there. I mean, we wore the Grand Bulldogs, literally same decals, almost same uniforms too. It was really odd. But next game, I think this might be. There's not really that many big games this week, and I think this might be more of a game of the week. Tennessee at Florida. Yeah. Tennessee obviously ranked. I'm pretty sure
a big matchup between those two.
Exactly, and Tennessee is ranked number 11th. Florida obviously unranked, but Tennessee too. They've seemed to struggle really early too. Even this past week, they were struggling to hold on. I honestly thought Tennessee was going to lose this past week. By the way, they're starting out their game, and I mean, man, I seriously think this game. I think it's going to come down to the wire. I still have Tennessee winning. But I think this game is going to be a lot closer than Tennessee fans want it to be, especially in Gainesville. Like, the atmosphere there is wild. So
Tennessee's only an 8-point favorite or 7-point favorite. I briefly looked at the spread. I like Florida in this one. I think this is going to be a statement win for Billy Napier and his tenure there, because since they lost to Utah and the way things ended last year, he's been on the hot seat. And I think Billy Napier is a great coach, and they have talent in Florida. He's got to put it together. At home in the swamp, I've been there. It's electric. I mean, at night too. Like I think Kirk Herbstreit and Chris Fowler will be calling that the main duo calling games. I like Florida in this one at home.
go Gators. All right, Alyssa, it's up to you now.
I don't know much about either of these teams, but Morgan Wallen's from Tennessee, so we'll pick Tennessee for this one.
All right, I guess that's the way
Logical thinking, right?
I mean, I guess. But that leads us into very logical thinking. Our next game, we have James Madison headed to Troy to play. James Madison started off 2-0 in Sun Belt Conference. Well, I mean, they haven't played any Sun Belt Conference games yet. But Troy's 1-1.
They beat Virginia.
Yeah, they did beat Virginia by 1 point last week. And man, this is a tough game because last year James Madison had a pretty good year.
They won their side
exactly
of the
in the inaugural season for them in the Sun Belt, but obviously they couldn't compete in the Sun Belt Conference Championship due to the fact that it was their first season. They don't get to play in the title game, yada yada yada. But I mean, this game I think will be really close. Troy's the reigning conference champs, and coming off a 1 loss to Kansas State last week. But, I mean, this Troy team is really good, lots of returners. I don't think there's any huge quarterback play out of either team, but both teams have really good running backs. But I think either way, Troy is at home. Troy is going to take down James Madison at home.
Yeah, this is a huge matchup, especially to start off like Sun Belt Conference play. I don't know. We don't really know a lot about these two teams yet. I mean, obviously James Madison wouldn't beat Virginia, but I mean, Virginia at football is not, they're more of a basketball school. But, and like you said, Troy's at home. I do like Troy. I think it's close, and I think it's, I think it's a testament to how good Troy's been the last few years. I think they take this game.
Alyssa, Troy or James Madison? James Madison, Dukes at the Troy Trojans.
Obviously not Troy because we go to South Alabama, so go Jags. Have to take to, is it JMU? Is that what it's called?
James Madison. James Madison University. So
I'm rooting James Madison on this one because we don't like the Trojans.
In a few weeks, South goes to James Madison, so that'll be a tough one.
Hey, go Jags.
Yeah, that'll be a very tough game to just pan out. But next game, we have LSU at Mississippi State, headed to Starkville.
Yep, Vegas, baby.
Yeah, literally. And I mean, that game right there, obviously, LSU's season didn't start out the way that they wanted it to after getting completely blown out by Florida State. And now they had a redemption week last week, obviously took that dub. But now we're having to head to Starkville, SEC opponent, playing Mississippi State. Mississippi State hasn't had a huge opening to their season after last week only beating Arizona by a clinching game by a touchdown. I think LSU clearly comes out on top of this game. I think Mississippi State could give them a run for their money early in the first quarter, but I think other than that, it's LSU's game. I think Brian Kelly gets a good bounce back win out of here.
A quarterback that a lot of people don't talk about, and he's been one of the most successful quarterbacks in the SEC the last few years, is Will Rogers. He has been he's been very good for that program the last few years. And of course, losing Mike Leach, the Pirate, it hurts. I like LSU in this one, but I think it's very close. I think Mississippi State keeps it close the entire game. I think Mississippi State's a little bit better than people give them credit for. The Cowbells are going to be loud. I've been to Mississippi State. It's annoying, but the Cowbells will be rocking. But I still think at the end of the day, LSU comes up with the dub.
What do you got, LSU or Mississippi State?
The first school that I ever visited was LSU, and I thought it was pretty cool. They have a live tiger named Mike, and it's actually his 7th birthday today. I saw that on Instagram. So we'll take on LSU for this.
Because of Mike the Tiger.
It's Mike the Tiger's birthday, so you gotta celebrate.
Like Kirk Herbstreit says, this is gonna be one of those graphics where we all pick LSU, and then somehow Mississippi State wins.
Yeah, literally.
Look like clowns.
Exactly what it might end up looking like. But next game, we have I wouldn't necessarily say the hottest team in football right now, but potentially the hottest team in the Pac-12, the Washington Huskies, starting out their season and their first 2 games, they scored a total of 99 points. Completely dominated Boise State and Tulsa. Michael Penix Jr. is off to an insane start for his Heisman campaign. Like, definitely looking great through 2 weeks. And Washington heads to East Lansing, Michigan to play Michigan State. And obviously there's the recent buzz around Mel Tucker and the stuff with the sexual harassment claims from someone who is a former rape survivor that advocates throughout college football about sexual assault. And she claimed that Mel Tucker sexually assaulted her. So obviously there's a lot of buzz in the Michigan State community, potentially not having Mel Tucker's not going to be coaching this game. He's not under the reins. I feel like that puts a big toll on the players too. And I seriously didn't think Michigan State was going to win this game either way. Yeah. But I think that's another huge thing where Washington goes into East Lansing and just completely dominates.
I thought it could have been a closer game had this stuff not come out. Had this a lot of distraction within the locker room. The coach gets suspended now under investigation. I think Washington's just too good. Michael Penix, the 2 receivers they have that are being scouted well into the first round. I think they're going to go into East Lansing and come out with like a 2-touchdown win. I think the Huskies are going to take it big.
Well, Washington Huskies at Michigan State. Alyssa, who do you have?
What is Michigan State's mascot?
The Spartans.
Huskies for Spartans. I'll go with the Huskies.
All right, you're going with the Washington Huskies.
Yeah, I like the mascot better.
Okay, well, that's where you're going. Washington probably will come out on top with that game. But that leads us into another game where it's kind of like, this definitely isn't the game of the week, but I think this is a game where the underdog could make a run for the money here. This is Minnesota at North Carolina. Obviously, Drake May still trying to make a name for his Heisman campaign. And Minnesota started off their season pretty well, too, for the most part. I mean, other than that ugly week 1 dub by the winning field goal over Nebraska. Very close game. They beat Eastern Michigan last week. North Carolina barely beat App State this past week, too. And, man, I think Minnesota is going to give North Carolina a run for their money for sure this game. Big defensive team, PJ Fleck's great coach. I think Minnesota is my upset. Minnesota upsets North Carolina at North Carolina. Ethan Kalek-Manis from our rival high school is going to have a game. And Minnesota upsets North Carolina on the road.
North Carolina's been getting a lot of attention lately because of the NCAA thing with Tez Walker, the receiver, not being able to play. I think that gives them, a chip on their shoulder, gives them something to play for him. And I just, like we talked about North Carolina and South Carolina a couple weeks ago, I think Drake May is the difference maker here. He's so elite. He's going to be a top pick in the draft. Whoever doesn't get in on the Caleb Williams sweepstake at number 1 next draft will get Drake May. I like North Carolina here at home. I know they struggled last week with App State, but App State always gives those Power 5 teams a run for their money. They almost beat North Carolina last year, and they went into Kyle Field and beat A&M. So App State is always one of those teams, one of those Group of 5 teams that'll give a Power 5 team a run for their money. But I'm still taking North Carolina at home.
I agree. I love the Tar Heel Blue. I can't speak.
Tar Heel
Blue. I love their colors, so I'm gonna agree
the color
with Brian on
scheme
this
is
one.
The color scheme is pretty good.
All right, I guess I'm finally the one to just break the barrier of all 3 of us picking the same team. But I think Minnesota comes out on top.
Hey.
Maybe that's the Big Ten fan in me, but
well, hey, Samuel RBT last week he picked Miami to beat A&M,
and he was right. Yeah,
right.
He called it. I honestly thought he was out of it calling that. So yeah, we'll see. But the last game of the week, we have our South Alabama Jaguars headed to Stillwater, Oklahoma, taking on the Oklahoma State Cowboys. And, I mean, this is going to be a good game. Not that Oklahoma State is a dominant Big 12 team. I mean, they've started out 2-0 against some, I wouldn't say crappy non-con games, but, I mean, you should start out 2-0 when you're playing non-cons that are smaller schools. And, I mean, they're off to a pretty solid start, but at the same time, their quarterback situation is odd because through the first 2 games, they've had 3 different quarterbacks play. They don't have a definitive starter at this point going into South Alabama. They're still kind of experimenting before they get into Big 12 play. And
I think that's what hurts them here. South Alabama's coming off a loss to Tulane, and then they just won this past week against Southeastern Louisiana. I think the second half of South Alabama's game against Southeastern Louisiana is when they finally started to see some of the momentum that South Alabama fans have been waiting to see, because they're kind of dormant against Tulane, a little dormant in the first half against CLU. And Carter Bradley finally started to pick it up. The defense picked it up that whole second half against Southeastern Louisiana. And I think due to the fact that Oklahoma State's still in a predicament starting quarterback-wise, I think South Alabama takes this one in Stillwater.
Woo!
This is a tough one for me to pick because I picked, last year South Alabama went to Los Angeles, the Rose Bowl, and almost beat UCLA. Probably Evan Boyson could be out, doubtful. He went down in that game versus CLU. So I think due to that fact, some of the safeties are dealing with some injury troubles, but I think they're going to be ready to go. I do think it's a close game. South just needs to play consistent. If they want to win this game, they got to play consistent football. They got to start. If they can play like they did against the second half against CLU, they can win this game. But I think, and Oklahoma State has been one of those teams that they lost a lot to the portal. But I'm taking the Cowboys. I think it's a tough task.
Boo!
I think it's a tough task, man. With the injuries that South has and Oklahoma State being in Stillwater, I just think it's a tough task.
I'm cheering on my Jags.
So who's your pick?
Final decision, South Alabama.
All right, I mean, pretty easy pick.
Nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with picking your alma mater.
What kind of a weird slate of games this week, just because there really isn't. It's a very underwhelming week in college football.
But next week's where you get some heavy hitters. You got Notre Dame and Nebraska, Notre Dame and Ohio State. You got Clemson and Florida State, Alabama, Ole Miss. Alabama looking to bounce back.
Colorado and Oregon. Yeah,
they'll be back up here again.
It'll be a very exciting week for college football fans next week. I mean, same with this week too. Like, as long as there's football here, it's a happy day, happy week. But but that'll do it for week 3 college football pick'em segment featuring the beautiful Alyssa Spertoli. And but so we thank you for coming on, Alyssa, and we thank you for tuning in on this episode. But thank you guys. Subscribe, hit the like button, and thank you guys for tuning in to episode 24.